I like supply and demand because it's fundamentally the nature of business. What people want versus what is available for sale. And it can take um, a complicated concept such as why does this cost so much, or why is this out of stock, or what's the next invention, and can quantify it into, so we can maybe understand or better predict it. And it's also an introduction to basic economics. So we want to understand how consumers and producers come together on a price and a quantity for each good or service that's sold. So when we say a market, that's the market in general of everything that's available for sale. There's going to be demand, what people want, how much of the item they'll want at how much of a price, and then there's going to be supply, what people are willing to sell at what price. And in a healthy economy, there's people who are willing to buy, people who are willing to sell. Um, they meet with perfect information about what's available for sale, and they determine a price that's known as the equilibrium. So I think you can understand that the more people want an item, the higher it will be. When the Leafs are the Raptors are in the playoffs, many more people want to go to the games, and the prices are higher and higher. So uh, high demand contributes to a high price. And I think that you might understand when there's more of an item, prices are lower. If you go on StubHub and there's a concert with many tickets for sale, it's not going to get the same prices as a concert with a venue with limited seating and limited seats for sale. And we can actually take it and draw a graph where the two curves meet in the middle and we get to an equilibrium. So the quantity is always on the x-axis. The price is always on the vertical axis, and we can call them P and Q for short. Supply starts um, initially when the price is cheap. Very few people are willing to sell it. So it's always going to go from the bottom left to the top right. As the price raises, more and more people are willing to supply it. It's like Uber. When people see that there's a surge price going on, more people become willing to drive. So the higher the price, the more producers are willing to supply that good. On the other hand, when price is very expensive, a small number of people want it. Demand always goes from the top left to the bottom right. As the price lowers, more and more people are willing to consume the good. They become interested. It's like if you asked your friends, well, would you go to this concert? These are the tickets. You know, this many people put their hands up. If you say that the tickets are a cheaper price, you probably get more replies. You get more people messaging you for the tickets, and the cheaper it is, the more people would be interested in those concert tickets because at first only the hardcore fans would be willing to pay top dollar. As it becomes cheaper, more and more people will be willing to attend the concert for the entertainment value. So when we say supply, we're talking about all the goods and services that are available for sale at a given price. So and we're kind of assuming that they're reasonably interchangeable. That for soft drinks, that all the brands are roughly about the same, so that we can make a market for drinks that are for sale. And demand represents the quantity of goods that consumers are willing to purchase at any price. Equilibrium is market equilibrium is the point in the middle. So the law of demand states that when the market demands a high quantity of a good or service, the price for that good or service will be high. So that would be in your economics exam, in your business test. The law of demand states that when the market demands a high quantity of a good or service, the prices for that good or service will be high. And then the opposite. When the market demand is low, prices are low. So some products that might have high demand and high prices, like the Leafs tickets or the Raptors tickets when they're in the playoffs. New clothes at the start of a season when they're trending. Uh, New versions of Apple iPhones. You'll see people lining outside the store, so there's high demand for them and they can charge high prices when they are first released. Now, some products with low demand. Well, tickets to a university sporting event. If you ever go to U of T, not a lot of people watching the basketball games, so consequently, tickets are, $10 free for students. Close at the end of the season, you'll start to see that stores in the mall will offer clearance uh, devices, and we would say, an old, a device, a BlackBerry, something people don't really want anymore because it was not as useful as an iPhone. An old version of a phone would have a very, very low price. Some people might still use it, but it's not going to have the same cachet as a new item. So we have some factors that can affect demand. So here we have a scene from Black Friday where people are pushing each other for flat screen TVs. So obviously, what has happened on Black Friday that's made people push and shove in order to get the TV? What caused demand to skyrocket? Well, the first thing is price. If the price is too high, consumers will choose not to purchase it, or they'll buy a substitute instead. So when there's the school prom, the really, really fashionable dresses uh, that are expensive, there will be lower demand for those expensive dresses than a more reasonable average price dress. That is, the cheaper options will be demanded by more people because they're more affordable. Aside from price, well, the price of a substitute or a complementary good. So substitute goods can replace another. If Coke increased its price, people would demand more Pepsi. Complementary goods are products that go well together, like movie tickets with popcorn and snacks. So if the price of the snack bar doubled, less people would be willing to buy movie tickets. And the substitute goods, they can be easily substituted. So when the price of Netflix goes down, it inspires people to unplug from their cable and subscribe to Netflix. Complementary goods, things that go well together. So for example, when the price of gasoline rises, fewer people want cars, they choose to walk, take transit, carpool, things of that nature. Another factor that influences demand is the income of consumers, because when you have a higher salary and you make more money, you demand more things. Stores have been struggling since the COVID-19 shutdown because many people have lost their income, so their demand for goods has fallen. They're not buying as many discretionary items. Future expectations. So if I expect that I'm going to get a pay raise, I might buy a house in anticipation of that. If I expect the price is going to drop because there'll be a sale on Black Friday, I might postpone my purchase until after Black Friday. So there's a website called Tomorrow's Gas Price Today, and you can Google it, and then people look at that to decide whether they should buy gas on the way home from work. So if tomorrow's gas price is higher than today's price, they'll choose to fill up today. If it's the opposite, they'll wait until tomorrow on their way to work to fill up for gas, or another time when the gas becomes lower. And then just tastes and preferences. As things change, as people change, they demand new goods, different goods. So if Red Bull had a big advertising campaign and they plastered Toronto with billboards, there were ads on social media, there were commercials during sporting events, this would inspire more people to want Red Bull instead of other drinks. So remember, those are the 4 factors that affect demand: the price, the income, substitute or complementary goods, future expectations, and tastes and preferences. So here's something that I put together. about how the Raptors' attendance is correlated to their team record. So you can see since they got started, um, when they have had a bad record, they've had bad attendance. But when they win, it becomes trendier to shop there, so people choose to. They want to buy more tickets. They start selling out. They've had since they started winning with Nick Nurse. They have a big sellout streak. So again, when they weren't any good, tastes and preferences suggested that the Raptors would not be a popular item. So then the other half of the equation, which is why I use the scale presentation, is supply. Because supply and demand, that's how they get the price that works together. So the law of supply, again, this is on your economics exam. The law of supply states that as prices rise, the quantity supplied by producers increases. In turn, as prices fall, the quantity supply will decrease, hence the negative slope. So here are some goods with high supply and low prices. When there's a concert at the Rogers Center, the average ticket price is lower than an intimate setting at Massey Hall or a smaller venue. Generic jeans you can get at any fast fashion store in the Eaton Center. There's going to be lots of those. You can go from one store to the other and find the lowest prices. Regular cars, they're pretty standard. They have a certain safety standard, a certain fuel economy, a certain design. They're going to be a lot cheaper than a luxurious brand. So some things that are scarce when the concert tickets are at a unique venue like Massey Hall. Limited edition jeans by a famous designer. Tesla cars or fancy sports cars. So what affects supply? This is a factory that closed. What caused it to stop producing goods? Well, the first is the cost of production. If things become more expensive to produce, fewer business will undertake the risk of producing it. So one of the reasons that medication is so expensive is because medical drugs require a long production and testing procedure. It takes a long time, it takes a lot of studies, it takes a lot of medical expertise. So they're only willing to do this because they can charge a high price. If they had to charge the actual cost of the medication, or they could only charge low prices, less pharmaceutical companies would be willing to undertake the production of needed drugs. So the cost, as if food becomes more expensive, if food costs, waiter costs rent costs become more expensive, fewer people will decide to provide food in restaurants. Changes in technology, something can become more efficient. For example, some companies have replaced their support lines with chatbots, and that AI allows them to lower their costs. And change in technology, the AI allowed them to use the chatbot. The desire of the producer to operate the business. Sometimes people just don't want to be in that job, or they decide they'll change careers to do something that they'll enjoy a little better. The environment or other conditions, when during COVID-19, when many borders shut down, it was hard to get goods that were produced overseas to market. It was hard when there was a sudden demand for masks, and then they couldn't get the other masks from overseas because the border was shut down. There was a shortage of personal protective equipment. So if there's a drought in California, there'll be less vegetables and less wine and less fruit growing. So the next harvest, you'll see higher prices. So groceries, you might not realize, are actually tied to the exchange rate, because we have a good dairy industry, a good cattle industry, a good pork industry, and those are some things we have more than enough. We'll export them. As soybeans, we'll export them to other countries, but we can't really grow some fruits. So we have to get our oranges, our tomatoes, our strawberries, some of those fruit items from the U.S. where it's more temperate. So if the Canadian dollar is low in value, it's more expensive to get those products from the US. Here's how orange juice, here you can see the price of the Canadian dollar lately, and it's actually further below the US dollar at the time of this screencast recording. But it's something that it changes from day to day. And then here's an everyday item: 1 kilogram of oranges. And I went back to look at the history of that item over the years, and on the y-axis is the exchange rate. So the higher the exchange rate, the better the Canadian dollar is doing. The lower the exchange rate here, the worse the Canadian dollar is doing. That's how many American dollars 1 loonie will buy you. So it shows you how it affects the price of oranges in the supermarket. There's a pretty strong trend there. So exchange rates will affect the supply of goods and how much is available for sale.